In 1896, deep in the mountain of northern Ethiopia, tens of thousands of African warriors faced the army of European empire. Italy had come to conquer, believing Ethiopia would fail, like the rest of Africa. But what happened next would shock the world. The battle that changed history. It shattered the maze of white invincibility and ignited the sprint of resistance across the continent. At the heart of it all stood one man, an emperor, a strategist, and a visionary, Menelik II, the emperor who defied colonialism and won. The story begins in 1844, in the highlands of Shawa, Ethiopia. A boy named Haile Mariam was born into the royal house of Shawa, the son of King Haile Menelik II. From the start, his destiny was extraordinary. He was raised among priests, warriors, and poets, learning the traditions of Ethiopian ancient empire. But when he was just 11 years old, his world collapsed. Emperor Theodosius II, determined to unite the empire by force, invaded Shawa. Menelik's father died, and the young prince was captured. He was taken to the emperor's mountain fortress at Makdala, not as a guest, but as a hostage. For nearly 10 years, he lived under Theodosius' watch. Captivity did not break him, it trained him. He studied his enemy, learned patents, diplomacy, and the art of power. By 1865, he made a daring escape, crossing mountains and deserts to return home. When he reached Shawa, the people welcomed him as their lost prince. He was crowned King Menelik II of Shawa, and his first words as ruler were not of revenge, but of rebuilding. He returned to unite Ethiopia. From a boy imprisoned in the mountains, Menelik emerged as a young king with a vision. But ruling Shawa was only the beginning, a foundation on which he would build an empire. Menelik was not just a warrior, he was a builder. In a time when most African rulers fought to survive, he planned to modernize and reorganize administration, introduced new taxes, built roads, and strengthened the military. His most important ally was his wife, Taitu Butul, a woman of intelligence and courage. She was more than a queen. She was a strategist, a voice of conscience, and later hero of Adwa. Together they dreamed of a modern Ethiopia. He expanded his influence beyond Shawa, conquering neighboring regions through both diplomacy and battle. He brought Harar, Arsi, and Wollo under his rule, expanding his kingdom into a true empire. Unlike many rulers, he didn't destroy the cultures he conquered. He united them. He allowed local leaders to keep authority under his protection, creating stability instead of fear. Menelik also traded with Europe, buying modern weapons and learning about outside of the world. While other African kingdoms fell under European greed, Menelik's Ethiopia grew stronger and watched. But even as Ethiopia thrived, the shadow of European ambition loomed over Africa. Menelik's growing empire was about to face a threat unlike any he had encountered before. In 1884, in Berlin, European powers gathered for a meeting that would seal Africa's fate. The Berlin Conference. In that room, men in suits, none of them African, divided the entire continent among themselves. Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, and Italy carved Africa like a cake. By the time it ended, nearly the entire continent was claimed, except one land still free, Ethiopia. Italy, a young and ambitious European nation, saw Ethiopia as its opportunity for glory. It began by colonizing Eritrea, right on Ethiopia's northern border. Then in 1889, after Emperor Johannes IV died in the battle, Italy saw its chance. They recognized Menelik as new emperor and offered friendship, weapons, and gold. In return, they wanted something simple, a treaty of friendship. It was called the Treaty of Wuchale. But inside the treaty, there was a lie. In the Amharic version, it said Ethiopia may use Italy as a diplomatic channel. In the Italian version, it said Ethiopia must turn Menelik's empire into an Italian colony. The ink was barely dry when Italy announced to Europe, Ethiopia is ours. Menelik was outraged. He refused the deception, tore up the treaty, and sent a message to Rome. Ethiopia has no master. We shall not be anyone's colony. Italy answered with war. The stage was set for a clash that would shake the world. Menelik's vision of a united Ethiopia would soon be tested in the most decisive battle of his life. Italy underestimated Ethiopia. They believed Menelik ruled over scattered tribes. They were wrong. Menelik called upon every region, every faith, and every warrior. From Tigray to Oromia, from Wollo to Gojam, thousands marched under one flag. Priests carried crosses to bless the soldier. Empress Taitu led her own battalion, fierce and fearless. The call of the emperor echoed across the highlands. We have come together not for conquest, but for our survival. While Italy had modern refiles and European discipline, Menelik had something stronger: unity, faith, and the knowledge of his land. His generals, Ras Alula, Ras Makonnen, Fitaurari Gavayo, were master tacticians. As the armies moved toward the north, Menelik's camp became a moving city. Hundreds of thousands of soldier families and priests living on hope and faith. They marched toward a place that would soon become immortal in Africa's history. Adwa. In the quiet of the mountains, destiny waited. The sun would soon rise on a battle that no one would forget. At dawn, the mountains were silent. Then, the sound of trumpets and thunder. The Battle of Adwa had begun. Italy's generals believed it would be an easy victory. They divided their forces into 3 columns, a fatal mistake. Menelik lookouts saw their movements from the hills before the Italians could regroup. Ethiopian forces surrounded them. The battle raged for hours. Rifles cracked, cannons roared, and the cries of warriors shook the valley. Fitaurari Gabayo led a fearless cavalry charge that broke through the Italian lines. Ras Alula's troop crushed the flank. From the hills, Titus' force cut off the Italian supply line. By midday, the battlefield was chaos and Italy's army was collapsing. More than 7,000 Italian soldiers lay dead. The survivors fled in panic. When the dust cleared, one truth stood above all. Ethiopia had won. It was the first time in modern history that an African army defeated a European colonial power in open battle. The world has stunned. Newspapers across Europe screamed, "The Africans have defeated an empire." Across Africa and black diaspora, Adwa became a symbol, a beacon of hope for freedom, and at its center stood one name, Menelik II. But Menelik's story did not end on the battlefield. Victory was only the beginning of a legacy that would shape Ethiopia for generations. Victory at Adwa was not the end, it was the beginning. Menelik returned to Addis Ababa as a hero, not just the ruler of Ethiopia, but the symbol of African resistance. He used his victory wisely, not to conquer, but to modernize. He built Addis Ababa into a capital city. He introduced the telephone, telegraph, electricity, and the first modern mint. He strengthened education and built roads across his empire. Menelik believed true independence required not just freedom from Europe, but the progress of his own people. Even as his health declined in the early 1900s, his legacy grew. He became a legend, the emperor who united Ethiopia, defeated colonialism, and proved that Africa was not helpless. The story of Menelik II is more than history, testament to courage, unity, and vision, lessons that echo long after the battlefields have quieted. When Europe divided Africa, one nation stood free. When empires fell, one flag remained unbroken. That flag was Ethiopia's, and behind it was the sprint of Menelik II. He showed the world that courage would defeat cannons, that unity could break chains, that Africa's story was not one of submission, but of strength. Even today, the echo of Adwa lives on. In songs, in hearts, in the pride of continent, he was the emperor who defeated colonialism. He was Menelik II, the Lion of Africa.